also seasonals. And I'm really happy to speak to you today about a project that we have launched at Eclairs that we call the Fashion Living Lab. So we're really passionate about the evolution of fashion as a system, also like not only like trend-wise or expression-wise, but also as a system, and its underlying consumer values, shifts, and preferences. So we launched a few seasons ago a Fashion Living Lab, which is sort of internally where we work together on decrypting the consumer trends a little bit further on. And it's very honorable for us to share today at PV a very first extract about this session here that we worked on as new boosters in this very specific moment of crisis. So the keywords that we're going to hear today are really important. They're really like there to build a creative bubble. We call them like a sort of a trinity. It's like trust, care, and enjoy all together to create an emotion. As you know, emotion is very important in case of creation, but also for purchases. For example, a lot of our purchases are really driven by emotion, whatever we think of it. And nowadays, we want to examine these a little bit closer under the new context to see what could be the new boosters for the fashion world. So here you can see how they like work as a synergy together, this idea of trust, caring, and then having this joy, this savoring, and create a sort of a valuable creative process. So what are we trying to look at today? What are the questions that we're trying to answer? There's actually going to be like two parts in this presentation here. First one is about social engagement. And we have called it like, what can consumer like no longer accept? Like what has this context given us or like taken away from us that makes that there's a shift in a mindset and that we want to move away from? And then of course, more importantly, new motivations, what will be the drivers for creation, but also buying, and what is going to be the psychological needs and excitement that needs to be like bubbled again, that could bring us some new dynamics. Let's have a look at them. So the first bubble, as I mentioned, is no scope to you, of course, the whole idea about trust in the fashion world as a system. And this is, of course, a very important point because there was already a lot of questioning about the frantic pace that the fashion world was caught up in before actually entering in the COVID crisis. And the whole like questioning was very much accelerated during. So the crisis provided like a really unique opportunity for us to reset and reshape the system. A lot of fundamental questions emerged and helped us think about the foundations a little bit more. Like, of course, sustainability issues, super important. The idea that we make so many hundreds and billions of goods that are actually, some of them never worn, like maybe 20% of them really never worn and burned after 1 year of manufacturing. The idea of all this energy that we are caught up in and what it takes to the planet. There's a lot of thought is being put into this and accelerated these questions later on. So transparency is going to be an issue about this here. We're going to see that. The whole idea that the fashion world is on a path of rehumanizing, in a way, its destiny. What is the consumer moving away from? Brands without commitment. Beyond the style, the values, the desirability of the brand, it is very much so important that there is a real message and true commitment. This had been very critical in the past seasons, evermore. The mission of the brand needs to bring sense to it, and it needs to be clarified with the consumer what a brand is about. We have clearly seen that brands that were not clear about where they stand, what they stand for, have been rejected recently in some examples we're going to see later. Now, honesty of the brand is going to be a very important point here. Honesty is not about perfection. It's not about like transparency, like, oh, I can't be really transparent because we're not perfect yet. It is more about what do I stand for, what we're trying to achieve, communicate on what we have done and what we can do better. Consumers will be more and more radical about this. We have this like little verbatims that you see there in the italics on the screen. This is more like what came out of our research, like speaking with real consumers, like thinking that maybe buying is really like a social act, it's sort of a responsibility, and I want to know what I buy into, and most certainly also know what I don't want to buy into. So the idea of honesty of the brand, really to prove to me what they're doing, is super important for the future consumer. So that brings us directly to this idea of relationships. So as you can see, the whole idea of trust is also about like from person to person. The idea of perceiving a brand actually as a human being. Like if this brand was a human being, would I be attracted to this person? Would I feel comfortable with this person? Now that makes us think about relationship. Care is the relationship in broader sense. It could be from consumer to brand. Could also be like from consumer to the clothing that we buy. Do we care about them? Is there a relationship? Thinking about how does this brand work? What is behind those clothes? What are the people behind the clothes? All of this is this idea of relationship, and there cannot be like the relationship without the trust. And all of this is coming together as like some sort of a dynamic. So the idea of just buying goods in a very like anonymous way has been put behind us. And nowadays, goods, production, buying is really about celebrating also humanity and being in interaction with other humans as ourselves. So fashion brands lately, you have seen that they have played a really like major role in supporting different types of movements. Of course, the Black Lives Matter movement was a huge example of it. And we have actually seen on the social media that consumers that were very much strong into like related with the brand and saw that their brand would not like stand up, speak out, would really be furious about it and stand up for it in social media to like force the brands to say something about it. So it's been really a stronger acceleration on this point as well. But this social movement addresses actually all types of discrimination. So it could be about age, it could be about body type, it could also be like physical or status. It really shows that before there was like exclusive, the idea of fashion being active on an exclusive level is now going to change, and that the industry is going to move forward to something that is more like breaking social stereotypes and also being more on the empathic side and to moving into full inclusivity. They're actually pushed by the younger generations. We can really see that when we speak to the year of 2000, like it's like student age, like 20, 25, even the younger ones, the younger they get, the more militant they are about it, are really very strong about this idea that I vote with my dollar, even if it's maybe not very rich, but I vote with that what I have. I want to support a committed brand. It's almost like some sort of a political action. I want to move away from this, for example. And they also feel that they have choices and that actually they can be, they don't depend on those clothing or on those brands anymore as maybe like the generation before that would do. So this is what is going on over here. And they really think also about the idea of creativity. Is the brand creative? Is the brand copying? Is this brand having like a sort of a tone of voice that I can understand? So it goes quite strongly to really like boycotting, yes or no, and also trying to influence peers to say, don't go here, don't go there, or I have heard what is going on in this brand and you really should know that. So there's really something going on here that brands need to be careful about, because all of this new values is really about what we don't want about the brand anymore, and then you can have the best product in the world or the best pricing or your promotion, but it's not going to work. So actually we cannot disconnect anymore this whole like systemic idea about brand, product, and also the relationship. Here we have some examples about the idea of the inclusivity here of age and gender, also sexuality, body size, It's very significant as well that there's no more this idea of like plus sizes in collections going on, like it was a segment by, it should be separated. Nowadays, you can really see that it is part of the collection, it is part of the concept of the brand. On the catwalks on the right, for example, you see that maybe the same look is going to be shown on different body types, so you can really understand that the designer has been working on that and thinking about it. You see also at Make My Lemonade, it's like really part of their like social media, like there's a short movie about different types of body having like the same, like the exact same outfit and working with it. So that is really important shift. And we have seen it also recently at the LVMH prize for the young designers, where we saw in 2020 that there was a young designer really pushed forward as like inclusive fashion, not specifically making other sizes like bigger sizes, but trying to create garments that have really been thought of as adaptable to morphology. So in the design world, sustainability, inclusivity, etc., is all really now part of a sort of a prérequis, what you say in French. So it's like the new normal, and also part of a design process to start to think of our product that way. And that makes a big change. Also a lot of creative challenges, but fortunately, also a lot of excitement. Now, this is the part where we have spoken about what the consumer does not want anymore, and there's of course more, and would take us, I mean, don't get us even started because we would far go beyond the timing. Let's now have a look at what could be sources of motivation and joy and the dynamics that we would want to go into and see what could be new and exciting for us. So joy is, of course, super important, this whole idea of the bemarvelment of having clothes, of feeling them, of touching them. What could still bring us joy in new clothes or in clothes in general? Of course, during the pandemic, the whole effect on clothes of our well-being has been really like screwed. We really understood how it could like work on us, maybe like on a morale level. We're going to speak about that, and morale support. Are we looking for comfort? Is everything going to be blurred about home, office? Am I afraid of what is going on out there? Do I need sanitation? For example, this whole idea of sanitary environment, the aggression of it. There's a lot of things to say about it, and we really see that it's an important emotional part. This is where we're getting to the emotional part, and then we're going to see creatively what it could bring as dynamics. Now, first of all, we started by, of course, sorting out our cupboards and our dressings and our stocks. And most of the consumers that we spoke with, the younger ones, were like very like amazed, like I cannot go shopping. So sorry, I'm going to cough a little bit. It's going to be okay. So this whole like Marie Kondo effect at home, going through your dressing and seeing like how much stuff do I actually have, was a big shock for many consumers. We saw it on the social media. We had it in our social lab as well. So this whole idea, like I ask myself what I've been doing with all these shoppings. I find things that I've never worn. So it's really like a new way of thinking of on the consumer side. Do I really need this? What am I going to wear it with? And we see also here the responses of brands coming up, more or less. You can see that they're in the same mindset, right? You can see that Miuccia Prada says, well, it's a complex context. We need to be simple, not ostentatious, pragmatic, think about function, be serious. We at Beclair sometimes we think it's really like fashion so serious, but that's another point of view. But anyway, it's interesting to take this as a starting point for a creative process and jump into things like that. This idea of equipment, of gear. It has a really great potential creatively to start with it. And we can see it in other brands here. Like, for example, recent catwalk effects here. We have Marine Serre, for example, in the center. We have other ones of them. They really start with the idea of innovation, technology, savoir-faire, know-how. Sometimes there's like very innovative fabrics here involved, coming with like sanitized qualities, for example, or breathable, coming out from the leisure world and having this like new designed purpose. But you can really see that these are made to do something. There's really some thinking going on here behind it, and it's like seriously equipment for somebody to be dressed for the duty. Another idea is the idea of comfort. So working at home really gave us this the whole blur about being at home, being at sports, being at the gym, going to the office. We more or less looked the same for weeks, for months. And after a while, many designers, specifically the more creative people around us, were really starting to understand that they really needed some change. So the idea of comfort, we think, is really going to stay. But maybe not the idea of having it as a pure look, as sports oriented as we could find. Already here we see some example of going back to office in some sort of a blend that could be really interesting and could be some sort of a prérequis, again, a starting point to have some new design points coming up. Now have a look at this. We can really see that this idea of pro-comfort is going to give us some new categories. We don't really see anymore like it's sort of a new casualization, of course. It's like a champion word here. Casualizations of collections, of course, is very obvious. But there's also some like when it's casual, upgrading going on. You can see in collections that become more luxury, sometimes more chic, sometimes more mixed. If it's like women's, it may be like also femininity involved, like interesting twists and mixes. Or we have also the idea in the opposite, that anything that is like real tailoring, office wear, anything that is sort of formal becomes informalized, maybe still looking luxury, but in a very relaxed way. So we have some crossing over of the categories here, where we can also find new bubbles and oxygen if our brand is suitable for it. Here are some more examples that you can see this idea of informality. But so as you can see here, we're not into the casual wear anymore. We're sort of walking away from it. This is going to the office and still having some sort of a crossover and mix and match. So we have this idea of duty, formal wear and informal wear, and a little bit of leisure as well, all of them together. The home actually gave us a lot of inspiration, also still on the comfortable way, but also on the homeware, the whole idea of pyjama and adaptability and staying comfortable as well here. So this is a page that comes from our inspiration book, Fall Winter 22-23. We can see that we have this of comfort, but also the idea of adaptability, so being very, very secure, very safe, and having products that are really like completely adapted to us and really follow us, like on the skin. So that is something that this whole cocoon feeling, even if afterwards we're going out again, we're going to the office again, is going to stay with us in a sort of a state of mind. It has definitely shifted in a state of mind of the consumer. So we can see another blend in here, which is sort of super obvious, but still the idea of lingerie, anything that is like lingerie wear, homeware, etc. is going to be super important, especially because it now can like walk in and out, outside in, inside out. So you can see that your pajamas maybe move into office wear. We expect a lot about shirting as well, everything that goes around with the shirting, different like the cotton mixing, etc., with the little stripes. Maybe bathrobes will become like a sort of a starting point to become like dresses. The wrap dress, after all, the mythical wrap dress was in a way some sort of a wardrobe as a starting point creatively from the beginning. Pyjamas, the idea of a set as well, same fabric, uppers and bottoms. That is going to be important too. So it's going to be really influential on our fabric choices. The other way around, what could that be? Maybe having cocktail dresses to stay in. We need to have hugs, tactility, soft touches, hand feel for fabrics, being able to feel this, the idea of the cocoon, something that has been made preciously to last, that we're going to buy and to keep and to cherish. Here are some examples from Bottega, for example, very popular reboot of the brand with this like soft, very touchy aspect in the product. So brand, or if your label, if your collection goes for that. If you have like a strong fabric point, for example, in your collection, it should be very, very easy for you to like make that as your sort of like the spokesperson is the fabric of your collection. And fabric is going to be so important, because if you're going to like clarify your stories, then your fabrics could really be like the main actors of your stories, right, of the movie. We spoke about moral support before, and it's really super important, this idea. It's proven, actually. It's really something that is like scientifically proven. When we look well, when we dress well, we feel good, we feel confident, we're a little bit braver, a little bit stronger, we feel maybe up to duty, up to challenges that we're going to have. So this is something that is important. So this idea that we take really consciousness of, okay, I'm going to get out of the sportswear thing, out of the legging, out of my knits, I'm going to dress to be seen, for example. It's something that might be important for coming consumers. So this whole idea that we're going to have maybe broader shoulder, maybe brighter color, maybe something more optimistic in print as well, is going to play a huge role in the collections to come. We really love this idea of people like really smiling or laughing, and you can see that they're confident, and maybe the way that they dress have something to do with it. So this whole moral support thing, we can also see it on the catwalks. We can see it also in the way that the lookbooks are shooted, for example, or that the mannequins, the models, maybe get their own makeup done, and you post it on the Instagram, so there's more like spontaneity going on, maybe like in the relationship, maybe a little bit cooler, but also like closer, like a approach with the client. Even in a lookbook like Valentino that you see in the center, it's like couture inspired, 70 couture inspired, but still shoot on the beach like that. It's like very spontaneous, very like a good mood support that could be a huge source of inspiration for collections to come and for color. Comfort was never very far away. Comfort is so like it can be back every second, and every crisis there's comfort. It's like a basic need. It is soothing. It's super important. And effectively, yes, of course, we heard so many people that we interviewed, I need to buy clothes, but also like intimates, maybe a sports bra. I want to have a scuba diving suit because I want to go to swim in the sea in the month of December. And so all these ideas, maybe like sportswear, etc., to really be close to the body and have this function, also like to move and to feel some sort of freedom, also as a reaction. So comfort is going to be like the main point. That doesn't mean that we need only make collections about the jogging or like a leisure pant, because how many leisure pants are we going to be able to sell that in one season? I mean, that's limited. It's just maybe to think about like what is going to, dresses can be super comfortable. Knit dresses can be super comfortable. We're going to see that here. Plissé skirts with elastic belts, etc. So what could be the jogging pant of the dress if it was become in a mutation of a dress, for example? That are points that we might want to think about. And here's what we see. Knitwear is going to be the winning, like, key champion category, of course. Everything that is knitted, jersey, everything that could be around dresses. Knitted is going to be also a total look. So a dress with a cardigan, or maybe like a sweater with like a three-piece suits, for example. We really expect that type of behavior, consumer behavior. And makes completely sense. And it makes us think of the 80s, for example, like big brands that were there that like had a huge point on knits at that time. And to end our presentation, so with some creative tracks then, now that we have seen what the consumer doesn't want anymore, and that we have seen like what are new motivations, what are the points that we're really looking for, this whole idea of comfort, relationship with the brand, feeling soothed, feeling like also like the good mood vibes. What would be then our creative gestures also as designers? Of course, there would be a lot of them, just a few selections that we made here. The idea that creativity is, of course, super important. Our consumers at home also were like pushed to be more creative, right? They made like their own cakes. There were no more flour in the supermarket. There were a lot of do-it-yourself things going on, atelier going on. They have become like creative solutions, also like providers. So They expect also what they're buying to be more creative and exciting. We should be careful about the idea that in a crisis maybe we would be like super reasonable, super about data, and just create what we really can sell, etc. This might be a dangerous path if it was pushed a little bit too far. So there needs to be some balance about being pragmatic, but also having a sort of a creative energy and allure that is really very personal. What we need to consider, seasonality. Maybe seasonality is so last season. Maybe there's going to be, what if there's going to be like new seasons coming up? Maybe shorter collections or longer collections. What about all of this rhythm that actually pushed the fashion system to go so quick that it completely lost its luster and completely lost its mind? There is some seasonality to be considered, like maybe collections that can last a little bit longer, like 9 months on the floor over a year, for example, or some shorter capsules just to create some diversification. So there's a lot of examples that we see in the show. Here we see Jacquemus. We see, I think it was Make My Lemonade. Others work on it as well, the idea that we have like items that we can layer, that we can restyle, that we can work on, and we can really adapt over a longer period of time. So that makes the whole idea also more reasonable on a sustainable point of view, of course. And the more we wear our items, the better it is for the planet. Not just novelty for novelty is part of that. So maybe you're now saying, well, that is not so creative. It sounds actually pretty boring, but it isn't. It's the whole idea that we think that if we do novelty, we really know what we're doing it for and what we're trying to speak and what we're going to express, and it wasn't really there. And otherwise, we're also going to have a new, fresh look at what we already have or what we already can, what we can provide. Maybe we can restyle it, maybe we can repurpose it. And this is actually one of the purposes that Demna Vasalia, makes here with Balenciaga, but there are more of them. We have seen Hall of Fame sort of shows here at Prada, for example, where older collections were sort of redone or recycled or re-edited by Raf Simons here. We have seen Coach as well working on their own collection and matching things together, or also sometimes even like collaborating with vintage of other collections. So here we are more looking to not the designer just as a new product designer, but also as a fashion editor. And that's what makes us come to the idea of assemblage. So it's a super important idea that in our collections, we're not just working the product, but we are more and more also working about the expectations to surprise by mix and matching and feeling quite free about it. So that could be existing things. And this is the case here, for example, where we see some upcycling of materials that Acne is doing here. Miu Miu has been doing it as well. Sometimes it's just small capsule. Sometimes it's really like on sale also on the website and it's part of a collection. It's interesting because then it means that it is short and is going to be an end at it. And when there's no more, then there's no more. So this is also the idea of mixing different rhythms. And interestingly as well, having a new look at fabric again. Now, this is not buying fabric, but this is actually like having fabric. But then it sort of, if you upcycle, you also need to understand what are you going to buy to sort of like complete your assortment here. So it's an interesting point of view as a design point, and it can really bring very unique combinations here, as you can see. However, there is place for new clothes. Believe us, it's not just, we're not going to just rent clothes or just keep our own or recycle or upcycling. There's also a real need for newness. The whole idea of the fresh, the unworn, the unknown, the idea of back to school with our new crayons, for example, and thinking that, you know, everything can happen and there's like a really like a whole set and bunch of new chances for us. That is a unique feeling. It's all freshness that is also needed. What we heard also, the consumer said, it was like, I want to be back to real clothes. It's like, I want to get out of the jogging pant and wear something that's not relaxed and comfortable and really want to put on something like really new. and what is in real clothes that might be like defined for any by themselves. Savor something special. It means that we really wish to now be surprised now that we can like just maybe when we can buy things, what we have heard when we spoke to consumers is, I want to be surprised by this brand. If I go to a store, there needs to be some sort of a creative universe. There needs to be surprises going on. So it's but I mentioned this before also, it needs to be like the correct balance between like there's responsibility by the brand, but also this idea of some sort of a uniqueness that can be, it's not supposed to be like super crazy. Can also be just like the own creative universe and sales point, which is really important, standing point of view. That's what we can see here. For example, we see it at Jonathan Anderson, for example, very strong on color. We expect color to be a huge driver for the seasons to come, and is really there to say, well, I just wanted to have fun, and I just wanted my like eye candy, like the pleasure of going through new fabrics and different colors and just see what comes out of it, and feel free to do so. And that is very contagious, very contagious. And we see it at the right side also about when we see Elbaz working on the AC factory, this idea that fully integrated the idea of maybe leisure, home, Zoom meeting, just going out a little bit or having this cocktail dress to stay in, coming to its full expression by his own philosophy and his own fantasy. So again, these point of views are super important, and we expect and we trust the fashion industry to be able to believe in itself, find the creative solutions to keep the industry dynamic, going, bubbling, and reinvent itself also. Fully confident about that. We could go on and on, but for this time, this is going to be what I wish to share with you. So in conclusion, virtuous is the new normal. Each brand is going to define their own path, their own mission, the priorities to be sure that the relationship with the clientele is going to be fresh and honest. And on the creative side, we focus, really understand like what do we feel that our consumer is going to expect? Is it about comfort? Is it about what are the needs that are going to be there? And then what is my unique creative point of view that I could inject in that to come up with my own unique recipe. So this was it for today. We've been explaining to you about our Fashion Living Lab. It is something that we work on internally, but it is completely possible for us also to give some longer presentations. If you need to, then please reach out. It could also be like a personalized experience. Anything could be possible for us to help step in and fuel you with some creative ideas if we can. So please, in that case, if you feel inspired, don't hesitate to reach out to us. Here we are. We were very happy and pleased to meet with you today at Première Vision, and we wish you a happy bubbling season. Thank you.